All right, I want to delve more deeply into what is clearly a topic that is triggering a number of the people in our audience. It has to do with red states and blue states. We talked earlier in the week about what is it structurally that's happening in the red states that is making so many of them so poor, both economically, but with regard to infrastructure, with regard to health outcomes, and more. You've heard it a million times from the right wing. Red states are thriving, blue states are failing. Everybody's leaving failing New York and California, and everybody is going to thriving Texas and Florida. For example, it's more or less been the conservative mantra. We've talked about why, when you look at skilled workers of different kinds, skilled workers are, leaving red states and going to blue states. And this is part of the brain drain that we have seen. We've also seen it with regard to certain medical professions because of the absolutely disgusting anti-abortion laws that we're seeing in many red states. You also are seeing OBGYNs, for example, leaving red states and going to blue states. And what ultimately is happening, because the blue states are more economically productive and the red states are less so, is that the blue states end up subsidizing the red states. Great. We've talked about all of that so far. Here's another important part of this. Blue states are also leading a quiet revolution, racking up policy wins that are putting red states to shame when it comes to law and policy. So let's break it down because the facts are really all that matters here. On economic growth and innovation, the economy, conservatives love to hype up Texas and Florida, but California is the real standout singular powerhouse in the United States, home to the largest clean energy economy in the United States, hundreds of thousands of jobs in solar, wind, electric vehicles. Massachusetts, global leader, forget about national, global leader in biotech, thanks to decades of investment in education and in research. Now compare that to red states slashing school budgets while bragging about cheap labor. Innovation isn't cheap. Innovation takes investment. Innovation takes money. And it's happening in the blue states. Healthcare wins. Blue states are increasingly saving lives while red states play politics. States that expanded Medicaid under the Affordable Care Act. We now have the benefit of 14 years of data. The blue states that did the Medicaid expansion have better health outcomes. End of story. The red states that did it also have better health outcomes than their non-Medicaid expanding red state counterparts. Colorado slashed health insurance premiums by 20% with a reinsurance program. That's a really big deal. And meanwhile, California has also been capping medication prices so that people are less likely to have to ration medication that their lives depend on. What's the red state solution? It's let people fend for themselves. Freedom, as they describe it, and hype it up. We then go on to education and the workforce. Red states have spent a lot of time, energy, resources, school board meeting hours on banning books, whereas blue states have been working in a different way to improve education in a way that actually helps the economy. This is the critical thing. You look at Oregon and Rhode Island, free community college, New York and Illinois leading on universal pre-K. These, they talk about trickle down, give tax cuts to the rich and it trickles down, it never happens. These education programs really do lift up entire communities. And in red states, they're fighting over, do we fund schools at all? How do we get kids out of public school and put them in some kind of religious indoctrination program? One guess is all it takes to figure out which one really works. On social progress, red states have been targeting trans kids. They've been rolling back rights. And in blue states, we're actually seeing relevant changes that are helping both young people and the workforce. Washington and California raised the minimum wage to $15 an hour, boosting incomes without any significant effect on jobs. Now, I will be quick to admit, because the right-wingers will point it out, among fast food specifically, in parts of the West Coast where minimum wages have been set even higher, there has been a modest downtick in fast food jobs. That's true. The big picture is that it has been good for the economy, not bad for the economy. We've seen anti-discrimination laws in states like Massachusetts, which mean that people can work and live without the fear that many workers have in red states. Equality builds prosperity. It's not some wokester nonsense meant to be attacked. And I'll be the first to say, sometimes some of these ideas go too far. It's not the biggest problem we have, but there's no problem in pointing that out when it's the case. But the consequences here are that when people are secure in their jobs, when people are secure in their circumstances, they are more economically productive. Climate and infrastructure. Blue states prepare for the future. The red states just deny that it exists. New York passed this great climate law looking for carbon neutrality by 2050. They're investing in renewable energy. They're investing in flood prevention. Washington State expanding public transit to cut traffic and emissions. And meanwhile, red states are building highways and kind of crossing their fingers and doing nothing about rising sea level or preparing for the transition to electric vehicles. The bottom line is that this is a nonsense approach. And it's a nonsense approach, not just ideologically, it's in the data. The blue states are proving that these policies work. They work on healthcare, the outcomes are better. They work on education, the outcomes are better. They work on wages, they work on the environment, you name it, they are better off. And in the meantime, not only are red states ideologically opposed to many of these advancements, they're also wrapped up too busy in spending resources with the culture wars. The culture wars that are a major grift for them, as I outlined earlier in the week. Blue states, the irony is, the blue states on average are better at what the red states say they are better at, which is fostering an inviting business environment, creating societies and cultural guideposts that make people feel included and thus are fuller participants in society. So the next time that someone tells you, oh, it's the red states are just winning everything, ask them why it is that the blue state policies are actually what's helping people. But most importantly, ask them, why is it that the red states depend on the blue states? It is the functioning of everything I just told you that works in the blue states to generate higher GDP. And then those blue states end up sending out way more in terms of federal funds, which the red states get back. And I know we talked about this earlier this week, but I'll mention it again. The red states as a standalone country could not survive because they depend on the blue states. Now, remember that the effect is this further makes the blue states, according to HDI, Human Development Index, all of this is like a vicious circle that makes the blue states better places to live than the red states, according to HDI. But it has the downside of making the blue states the caretakers of the red states. In a sense, it's a Pyrrhic victory because by winning, the blue states get to help the red states to an even greater degree. And that's something that, as we look at the Trump policy, I guess the other thing we should talk about is a lot of this relates to Trump's policy packages, because the people that are going to be most hurt, everybody will be hurt to some degree, but the people that will be most hurt by the Trump package of policies are the folks disproportionately in the red states, but also the lower and middle income people in blue states, of course, who are already struggling. When Trump says to be a big boy alpha male, I'm going to start dumping tariffs on China, Canada, Mexico, whoever, and stuff's going to start costing more in the US. The wealthy, who disproportionately, of course, incomes on average higher in blue states, the wealthy, upper middle class to a degree, they can weather the price increases that Trump will cause more than the very folks that are already in the red states, the disproportionately poor states, depending on the subsidies from the blue states functioning well. So it's this vicious cycle And as is often the case, we spoke yesterday with Henry Giroux about it. Who gets blamed for it is a reasonable question to ask. It's a practical question. But that doesn't get to the fact that Republicans are quick to blame Democrats, even for things they should be blaming Republicans for. That's a valid thing to discuss, but it doesn't get to the fundamental cultural question of how did this crap get so bad to begin with? How did we end up with an electorate that is so easy to bamboozle in this way that they end up voting the way they do and still not figuring out what they're doing? And the answers, as Henry Giroux talked about, I talk about it in my forthcoming book as well. It's a long history. It's radicalization. It's attacking education, which includes critical thinking, epistemology, media literacy. It's social media to a degree, which has normalized what used to be just, hey, we don't have the same opinion about what's the right, what are the best movies? What's the preferred flavor of ice cream? And how should we organize certain aspects of society? The division that has been generated there, where we can't even just have disagreements anymore, all of these are parts of how we ended up in this situation. And while in one sense, to kind of wrap it up back to the beginning, while in one sense it is the red states that suffer because they are the ones less able to weather this stuff, it is also the blue states that suffer because we end up having to bail out the red states constantly in the form of disproportionately paying in more than we get out. That's where we are. It's not going to change in the next 2 years, that's for sure. On January 1st, we will have a spectacular membership special. If you've been thinking, maybe I'll get a membership, maybe I won't, January 1st is going to be a great day to do it. We're going to offer 100% of the member benefits at a significant discount, and you can be notified of this discount simply by getting on my newsletter, which you can sign up for at davidpakman.com. We'll take a quick break, and the Friday show will continue. Winter is the perfect time to cozy up at home with some freshly baked treats like flaky pastries, hearty breads, comforting pastas, and you can do it without any effort. Our sponsor, Wild Grain, is the first Bake from Frozen subscription box for artisanal breads, pastries, and pastas. Wild Grain simply takes the hassle out of baking. Everything bakes from frozen in 25 minutes or less. No mess or cleanup. Your family will be amazed, thinking you've become a master bread baker all of a sudden. My favorite is the croissants. You throw them in the oven, 25 minutes. Wow. If you're ready to bring all your favorite breads, pastas, and pastries right to your doorstep, check out Wild Grain. You can build your box of artisanal pastries, breads, and everything right now. And for a limited time, Wild Grain will give my audience $30 off your first box, plus free croissants in every box when you go to wildgrain.com/Pakman to start your subscription. Free croissants in every box and $30 off your first box. The link is in the description.